today with us, Anat. I am so excited for this conversation. I want to just kind of jump right in and then we'll kind of start swimming from there. Can you share the story behind the inception of Training Camp for the Soul, which is this amazing program that that you run? It's kind of like your whole vibe, right? What inspired you to even go in this direction and to create that?
Oof. Well, so Training Camp Soul has been around for 8 years. I've been in the industry for January will be 19 years.
Oh,
And
wow.
prior to that, I was always someone that my friends came to for the wisdom, the advice. God knows what I said to them back then, but whatever it was, it created this, sense of peace for them. So it was a path that I was always curious in, but didn't want to major in psychology. I didn't want the 8 years of traditional schooling. And so I did business and finance instead. So how did I end up here? Well, self-development found me anyway, 19 years ago. And really what led me to it was the relationship that I had with my mother. It was just like we always butted heads. And so we did our first program together. She paid for it. And I said to her, good, now you'll see that I'm right and you're wrong.
I love that.
Typical, right? And what I discovered in it or started to discover was first off that I just loved witnessing people transform. I loved the space of it. And so I never left. I stayed around a particular organization for years, did years of my own development through it, as well as volunteered and coached and mentored and all that. And 8 years in, I could say that I was very much developed as a leader and as a coach and had great listening skills and ability to work with people. But if you looked at my personal life, it was a shit show. I had no self-love. I was in a 5-year passionless codependent relationship. I was $40,000 in debt, most of which was self-development. So well invested, well spent. And I was lost in my careers. I was living in New York City. I had a lot of anxiety. I couldn't be by myself. Like needed to be with people. Anytime I was by myself, I felt this emptiness, this hollowness inside me. At the same time, living in New York City, it got too intense for me. I also didn't want to be out with people. So I hit this break point, this like ground zero point about 11 years ago where I was just like, I'm done. I'm done with New York. I'm done with this relationship. I just got to burn it all to the ground and bought a one-way ticket to California with $2,000 to my name, no car, no job, no home, no plan, and one girlfriend in San Diego who took me in and just realized that like, okay, I know a lot. I have a lot of awareness, but why does my life still look this way? So clearly,
Hmm.
whatever I know is not making a difference at all. So I was like, God, take the wheel. Like, I just have to let go. There's something about the energy of New York, which is like, oh, if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. And so we get a little cocky or we think that we could just push through and force. And that was very much me. I was just like, tenacious, relentless, like will not give up. And what I actually needed to do was give up, was let go of what I thought that I knew was best for me and start to really discover because I was operating from a place of survival. So it was like what I knew was
Hmm.
survival and just push through that and endure that and suffer in this way. And so I got to California and I discovered new ways. I discovered meditation and yoga and plant medicine and, um, you know, tapping into somatics and all this new world of tools that I never had when I was in New York City. And I also discovered that I didn't love myself, that I'd only scratched the surface. I call it like you have a garden, you are a garden, and there's all these weeds. And if you don't have the right tool, then you end up just trimming the weeds. And so you get
Hmm.
relief for a little bit of time. but then it grows back. And that was me for 8 years. It was like I had some tools. A lot of them were just cognitive mindset tools, which are still important, but are only a part of the equation. And if anything, the experience of having awareness of your shit, of your weeds, and having some tools but not the right tools could be even more disheartening than for those that are clueless that they even need to change a thing about themselves.
Oh, yeah.
And it's because now you can't unsee what you've seen, but you don't have the right tools. So you're kind of stuck in this, like, well, I have to keep managing myself. Like,
Hmm.
I have to keep managing myself, and it's exhausting. And so I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this. Like, once you open this up, this Pandora box, it's like, well, now what do I do with all of it? And so, of course, I didn't give up. I just let go of what I thought that I knew was best for me and was led down a beautiful path and eventually met my mentor. And he was a body mind psychologist for over 40 years. He passed away, he's no longer with us, but the work that he did, that we did together, was my first experience of real transformation. And see, to me, transformation is not, I've discovered, I realized, it's not a walk in the park on a beautiful sunny LA day. It's a walk through a burning forest and there's some dragons to slay. And
Hmm.
so it's not like, ooh, aha moments. Oh my God, I feel so much better. It's actually like, oh fuck, I'm feeling so many things I don't want to feel, and I'm a mess, and now I'm crying, and now I'm feeling this pain, and oh my God, is this ever going to end? And what's on the other side? I just don't know. So if anybody listening experiences it in that way, congratulations, you're on the right path.
Hmm. Yeah.
And so I worked with him, and when I came to him, he said, "You're different." I go, "Yeah." And he's like, "You have a lot of awareness." I'm like, "Oh fuck yeah. I'm so
Ugh.
aware." He goes,
Yep.
"You're here for finishing touches." I'm like, "Please, God, please. I'm just so done managing me. I'm ready. I want to serve other people." And so I worked with him for 4 months, and at the end of it, he said, "You have a real gift for this. Would you ever want to do what I do?" And I'm like, "No. I don't want to sit in an office and see people for an hour. No, this doesn't appeal to me." And really, I didn't know, not that I didn't know what I wanted. I felt free for the first time. I felt free from needing other people. I felt like I could be with myself, and that I wanted to be with myself, that I wanted to get away from other people. And so I
Hmm.
gave myself 90 days. Then I quit my job and bought a one-way ticket to Maui and then Kauai, and spent 5 months just adventuring and having love affairs and writing and playing and hiking and just like playing with my inner child. Like all the years that I forced myself, disconnected from myself, burned myself out, I was like, I just want to take a break and play. Like, who am I? And so I did that. And 4 months into it, I was like, okay, I feel good. Yeah, I want to do something with this. So I reached out to my mentor and I worked with him for a few months in just getting clear on what I wanted to create. And then I started Training Camp for the Soul. I felt that at that point, I had enough tools and inner healing and awareness that I've been seeking for 10 years, because I wanted to start coaching when I was a teenager. But
Right.
I was also in integrity with, I I I had what people would call imposter syndrome, which was very much fair. Like, who am I to go work with people? And it was true. I didn't have my shit together. You shouldn't. You should really wait until you at least have your own shit together. Then you got some good tools that you can help other people. You can't take people where you haven't gone yourself.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so I felt ready at that point. And I started my business. Um, no social media, no podcasting, no website. This was 8 years ago. So obviously, social media has now become more of a requirement for these things. But I just word of mouth, just knocking on doors. No, I'm kidding. I didn't knock on doors, but just word of mouth, meeting people, being referred to people, and my business took off. I did six figures my first year and never looked back from there, and built it organically because it worked, because people got profound transformation from it. And a year into it, I had clients say to me, I want to learn to do what you do. And I was like, I don't know what this is. And then for two more years, I kept hearing that. And so 4 years in is when I set the intention to get clear on what is my method? What how can I duplicate myself? How can I teach people? Because people want to learn from me. And so I set that intention, achieved that intention. And then for the past 3.5 years, I've been certifying coaches, healers, and leaders in my methodology. And so that's a snippet of my journey. Thanks for
That's
listening.
amazing. Yeah, no, thanks. That's amazing because yeah, I think that well, what you're doing is so very needed, obviously. Um, I kind of had a similar, I came out to LA in 1995, not knowing what the heck I wanted to do, but I dove right into all the woo, all the healing stuff. I was very much from Louisiana originally, so it wasn't available to me there, right?
Yeah,
Got
yeah.
here and I was like, oh my gosh, this is it. This. I just felt more like myself, like more me here than I ever felt anywhere else. And so I knew that was aligned. And I did have a degree in psychology. I was also that person that everybody came to as a teenager, everything. I always felt like I wanted to work with people, but I never wanted to be a psychologist. Like I knew fully going into that program, I was not going to be a psychologist, but I got that degree anyway because it was kind of like, it was kind of expected, I was supposed to go to college. So I was like, if I'm going to go to college, I'm going to do this, but I know I'm not going to go and get a master's. I'm not going to get I'm like, that's like you said, I don't want to sit in an office. So yeah, I never wanted to sit in that office either, but I went to massage therapy school when I got to LA and I was
Ooh,
like, oh, I really want to combine the body and the mind. So I really want to dive into that a little bit with you because I know that the somatic aspect is a really big part of what you do. So can you sort of kind of take us through like how do mindset and somatic healing work together in your methodology to facilitate
yeah,
change?
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So yes, they do. They work cohesively together, and it's so important that we give attention to both.
Hmm.
Somatic has become the hot word in the past few years.
Yeah.
Everyone's jumping on breath work or everything's somatic. Everyone is saying, "Oh, forget the NLP, forget the mindset," which is what I spent 8 years around. And so for me, having experienced both, I see the power and the necessity of both. Because I've actually had clients that um, are so have done no mindset work, are all in the somatics. And what would happen a lot of times is that their mind would hijack them. It's like, okay, I'm so good at being in my feelings and expressing all the energy and all that. But then they're always looping back into
Uh-huh.
it because what happens is that, what you say to yourself, the beliefs you have influence how you feel. And so you could be all about the feels and feel all the feels. But if you don't rewire and shift the stories and the beliefs that you have, then you're going to loop back in. Then you're going to get hijacked constantly. And if all you have is mindset and you're just, which was, like I said, me for 8 years, you're like so aware of the stories that you're just like, oh, I'm just going to nip that in the bud. I'm just going to trim that. Then you're gaslighting yourself
Yep.
because there's a lot that needs to be felt through. You need to validate the experience instead of saying, which is something that I said years ago, is like, oh, don't be sad about the fact that dad was always working when you were a kid. He was doing that for you. He was supporting the family so mom could be home with you. Just go have a good relationship with him now. And I thought that was the fix instead of,
Uh-huh.
no, sweetheart, grieve. Feel the sadness and the grief that little Anat had because daddy was always working and wasn't there to give her the love that she needed from her daddy, not just from her mommy. Feel that. And
Yeah.
so the importance of both. So what was your question now?
Yeah, no, that totally answered it. And it's really exactly that. I feel that on a very very deep level. I too am super self aware. And I know a lot of my listeners are. We've kind of done all the things and read a lot of the books
Yeah.
and been in therapy for years and all of these things. And those are all great, right? Whatever. But yes, we really do need, we're not just a walking head, or we are a body. We this physical experience, and we hold things in our body. As a massage therapist for years,
Mhm.
I got really good at finding out exactly where people, like, just intuitively, and plus I went
Mhm.
through Reiki training as well. So energetically, I could feel where their
Mhm.
energy was and how to help them move through it. There's a lot of different ways to do that somatic sort of balancing and expressing. But I think that you really hit a very, very important point that I hope people listen to, is that you do have to feel it. Because if you're not feeling that and you're not actually
Mhm.
allowing yourself to experience that feeling, you're gaslighting yourself. You're gaslighting yourself into just suck it up, all of those things that we were kind of also told probably as kids too,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And so that inner child work
Mhm.
is so important. And as someone who does a lot of hypnosis and things like that, I'm really big on the
Yeah.
unconscious, obviously, right? Um, I
Mhm.
do love working with that part of us.
Yes.
And so much of that, I always tell people, you kind of have to think about your unconscious as like 7-year-old you. Like that is
Yes.
that little version of you. And so
Yeah.
let's kind of talk about that concept of the inner child and the reparenting. Um, how significant, I know the answer to this, but how significant do you think that is in personal growth? And also how that extends into people's businesses, right? Like how that shows up for them, not just for their personal development, but how that expresses in their business, that inner child work, how important it is. And also, um, what is the best way for someone to start that process who might be
Yeah.
like, what does that even look like?
So to me, inner child reparenting work is what's going to take you from survival into creation. It's what's going to give you the power to know that you can become the editor of your script of your life. What we all have in common is that at one point we were all kids with parents, whether those parents were present or absent, functional or dysfunctional. And so all of that formed some kind of script that we now play out. And we learned that script by what we saw, what we heard, and what we felt energetically, either how mom and dad felt about themselves or how they made us feel. And yes, there's influences of our society and siblings and grandparents and neighbors, but for the most part, you look at mom and dad as your role models, and they develop that script, and now you're just playing it out. You either copy or you do the opposite, you rebel, or you create a way to survive because it was an incident that was traumatic and required you to just come up with some survival strategy. Either way, none of those are you. And so here you are surviving a script that was given to you, that was inherited, that was imprinted in you. And you're playing out roles in your life that some of which you don't want to play, but you have to because it's your survival. And you're casting people to play in the movie of your life based on what feels safe and familiar. Familiar doesn't actually mean healthy. Those of you that grew up in a house that was chaotic, chaos is familiar to you. Where anytime you experience peace and calmness, you're hyper vigilant, you're
Hmm.
anxious, you cannot relax in peace
Yeah.
because it's unfamiliar to your nervous system. And so the reparenting and the rewiring is really the key to you coming out of survival and into being able to create your life and handle whatever life's going to give you. I'm 44. I know I've lived enough to know that life doesn't stop handing you opportunities for growth where you get to choose to meet those edges and challenges that you have to meet and overcome. And so it's really the key to all of that.
Yeah. That's a really great way of looking at it, I think, too. Um, And I think so many of us, I mean, I'm 53, so, I'm of that generation of
What? Girl, you look good. I hope I look good. I mean, I
it's
know I look good for 44, but holy moly. Okay. Rub some of that
it's
on
all that
me.
it's all that self-development. I'm just kidding.
That is, well, but
It is
yes,
part of
and that
it.
is a part of it.
Yeah.
100%.
It is, and
100%.
100%. One of my really dear friends, who is like an amazing healer, medium. Like, she's amazing, and she and I always joke about that, because she's like, I think we might be the only two women, in this area who don't have Botox. I'm like, it might be us, but I think there's a lot to be said for that personal growth and development, right? Like, releasing. It's the releasing, like you said before. It's the letting go. It's the letting go. Like, honestly, there's so much power in that, and it's so hard for people to do. Like, I get it, totally get it,
Yeah.
but there's so much freedom on the other side of that. So I really do hope that those of you who are listening can take that away from this as well. But I am from that generation of, like I said before, like, just kind of get over it. You're fine, you're good, whatever. And a lot of us didn't have parents who, it's the joke,
Hmm.
right? It's the Gen X joke of, our
Hmm.
parents had to have a commercial that came on at 10 o'clock at night to remind them to take care of us. Like, do you know where your kids are? Have you hugged your child today?
Oh my God, you're so right. I forgot about
I
that. That
know.
is some fucked up shit.
Isn't that
They
so
need
fucked
a
up?
reminder.
I saw that on Instagram the other day. Someone had posted the actual video, and it took me right back down to
Oh,
my childhood. And I was like, oh my God, they really did have a commercial reminding our parents to hug us. Now, luckily, I was like an anomaly. I came from a very loving family. Like, my mom, and, came from a very big family. So I never really felt unloved in that way. But there was definitely a lot of, just suck it up, just get over it, you're good, that kind of stuff. So we, like you said, we all carry like our own stuff, our own stories, our own, it's not even ours, right? But it was imprinted upon us against our will, and so it's our job to look at that with truth and honesty, and kind of work through that if we want to get through the other side of it. And it's not comfortable. It's not.
yeah.
It's not all roses. There's going to be stuff that comes up, but those triggers, man, there's so much gold in those triggers if you allow them to come forth. So I want to get
Exactly.
into, because you talk about these 5 stages to healing in your
Hmm.
TCS method. So
Hmm.
what are they? And then,
Hmm.
why are they crucial to this transformation?
Hmm. Yeah, awesome. Love this. And you guys will get a lot of nuggets. So pause, grab your notebook.
Yeah.
And also, as you hear these, because I'll go in depth into each one, really check in with like what stage you're at with a certain trigger, or what stages you skipped that may give you real peace of mind now, knowing you're not crazy. Why is this thing still here? Oh, because you skipped a few steps. I did 8 years of stage 1, stage 5, and skipping 2, 3, 4. So let's get into it, because I'm sure you're all already curious, ready to write. So stage 1 is awareness, and it's what has people obviously start this journey, pick up the book, the podcast, hire the coach, go to the workshop, right? There's something that you're aware of that you don't like, that you want to fix, or your husband wants you to fix, or your mother, you need to fix her, or something, right? That's what had me start this journey. And there's so much deeper to explore just in stage 1, of not just what you're aware of, because most likely whatever you're aware of is just scratching the surface. What's the survival pattern that's there? What's the actual uh, belief that is operating there? And what part of me am I listening to? And so in exercise, I like to give away a lot of tools here, guys, so that you get more value than just this incredible conversation. So an exercise that you can all do to start to get into deeper awareness, deeper understanding of yourself, is to get it out of your head. Because when we're in a trigger, in an upset, we do one of two things. We either call our best friend Or we go to the ice cream or whatever, and we just hear all the different voices in our head fighting for attention. And the thing about that is, most of the time, then we only end up hearing the loudest voice, which is not your inner child's voice. It's usually your ego. And here's the
Mhm.
thing, your ego is not bad. Your ego is your amigo. Your ego is actually your best, your the ultimate protector when you don't know how to tend to yourself and your inner child. It is designed to protect you. But what it looks like, the ego's approach is focus external. It's let's look outside of ourselves to feel better. Whether that's, watching TV or eating the ice cream or compare or saying, well, you're prettier than her, you're smarter than her, you're better than
Mhm.
her. So all of it is not taking you to healing you. It's all to distract you, but hey, it's there for your survival. So the better you get at tending to the inner child, which I'll back up and give you an understanding of your inner child, is the part of you that feels. It's your emotions, all of your emotions. It's the child walking into the room and saying, oh my God, I'm so excited. I met the sweetest man. Or it's a child walking into the room and be like, oh my God, I haven't heard from him in days. I'm like super anxious. What do I do? I don't think he likes me. I don't think I'm pretty enough, right? Either way, it's the happy, horny, or it's the like anxious, sad, frustrated. So anytime you feel anything, I want you to picture and imagine that little boy or that little girl being the part of you walking into your bedroom, running over to you and expressing that. Okay, so we'll pause there. So this practice is anytime you feel triggered or you feel like your mind is going a million miles an hour and you can't focus or be present because there's just a dinner party happening in your head and everybody is yelling over everyone. I want you, instead of calling your best friend who's amazing and is going to listen to every word you say, but still it's not going to do anything, I want you to turn to your journal. I want you to grab a piece of paper and I want you to imagine that you are sending this off to your best friend, which means you are safe to say it all. You
Mhm.
don't need full sentences. You don't need filters. You can just let it be messy. Whatever you hear in your head, you are dropping down on paper. You are taking a journal dump, right?
Yeah.
Dump it all out. Go, 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 go. Sometimes you won't be able to write as fast as the noise is happening, so just go with it. And then go back and read it and circle anywhere that you hear, I feel dot, dot, dot. I am dot, dot, dot. I feel like, or I can't. I wish. So all of those, except for the I wish, are your inner child. That's the voice you want to pay attention to because you're going to hear a lot of other shit in there too. You're going to hear your inner critic that's going to judge you. You're going to hear the ego that's going to say, well, fuck him. You're
Mhm.
better than that, right? So this is the part that needs tending to. Now you get to imagine closing your eyes and that part of you walking into the room and saying that sentence. I feel like no one cares about me. Or I feel scared. Well, if it's just an emotion, like I feel scared or I feel alone or I'm sad, then what does a child need when they feel that way? You need to hold them and just say, it's okay, I'm here, I'm not going anywhere. Yeah, feel that.
Mm.
And if it's a belief, like no one cares about me, I'm always going to be alone, that's a limiting belief. That is a part of your script. There's someone that modeled that to you. Who modeled it to you?
Mhm.
Mom or dad? Whose energy is that? By the way, mom is your role model for the self. Everything self related, you learned from mom, whether you copied or rebelled.
Yeah.
It's a fact. because the second you were born, you didn't know you were looking at mom, or you didn't understand that she said, "I'm your mommy," but her voice and her energy felt familiar to you because you just spent 10 months with her. So you don't see mom as separate. You see mom as you. And so in that moment, mom becomes your role model for everything related to how you see yourself, treat yourself, talk to yourself. Dad is everything that's not the self, others, the world, relationship to others. And so you get to explore, become more aware, explore deeper. Who modeled this to me? Is this mom's energy or dad's energy? Or sometimes both, which is hard. But always start with mom, always start with the self. Is this what I saw, heard, or felt from them? Is this how they made me feel? And so you could start to explore what has you believe this. And you can start to explore, where am I feeling this in my body? If it's a sensation, if it's an emotion. A lot of times we label our emotions as good or bad. And what happens when we label them is the mind takes over. If it's bad, I got to fix it. I got to make it stop, go away.
Mm-hmm.
If it's good, it's like, ooh, I want more of that. And really, the opportunity is to be with it at the level of sensation. Because excitement and anxiety feel the same in the body.
Yeah.
It's more of, what's the story? Are you walking down the aisle about to marry the love of your life? Or did your boss just call you into their office?
Yeah.
Right? And so let's get away from the label and get more curious about it at the level of sensation, of energy, because that's what it is. It's energy in our body. And when we speak, when we start to identify what that sensation feels like, oh, it's in my chest, it's tight, it's the size of a golf ball, it's heavy, it's ice cold, or whatever it is, name it in as many ways as you can. You're not judging, you're in facts. This is what it
Yes.
feels like. And you're also then speaking the language of the nervous system. The nervous system understands sensations. And so then you're working with the nervous system, where the nervous system can start to digest and process and discharge that energy and get familiar with that energy, so that you go from, I can't be with peace, I get anxious and hypervigilant when things are calm and peaceful, to, oh, I could be with peace. You start to build your nervous system's capacity to handle different energy and what that brings up in you. So I kind of jumped into stage 2 here, which is acceptance. Stage 2 is acceptance, and it's the hardest stage for people to cross, to move through, because we're not used to accepting. We're used to judging or fixing. We're not used to seeing that it's okay to feel this way.
Right.
And so practicing acceptance is that there's nothing to change, there's nothing wrong, there's nothing to fix. It just is. And a lot of times, if we are in an upset, in a trigger, and you accept it, it'll move through you in 90 seconds. They've done
100%.
Harvard studies on
Mm-hmm.
this. Same thing with a child. You see a child, you have a child, some of you listening, and if they're upset and you come over to them and you create safety for them and you say, it's okay. Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, you validate their feeling. Yeah, you're upset right now. Yeah, fully feel it. I'm here for it. I'm your cheerleader. I love you. I'm not going anywhere. Set your timer. 90 seconds, they're out the door playing again. But if you tell them, shut your mouth, we're in public, you behave yourself, and they have to stuff it down, oh,
Mm-hmm.
they're going to have a meltdown later because they've been holding it for hours. We are the same way. We just forgot. So when you ignore it, it gets louder. And then you think that you're anxious all the time when actually you've just been holding it for all that time. And so acceptance is learning to ride the waves. Think about the ocean. When you're in the ocean and a
Yep.
wave comes, do you want to accept that the wave is coming and ride it back to shore, ride it back home, or let it plummet you? And some waves are bigger and some are pleasant and smaller. Woo! Right? And your only job is to accept that the wave is coming and ride it. And sometimes as adults, because we, depending on how much, and here's the mind coming into the equation, depending on how much story is wrapped around it, how much you are fueling the wave, the fire, you could feel that way for days. And so, yes, it comes in 90-second waves. Like even grief, you're not going to move through grief fully in 90
Mm-hmm.
seconds, but it comes in 90-second waves and then you feel better again. And then, oh, here's another grief wave.
Mm-hmm.
But if you work, if like a couple of weeks ago, I was feeling anxious, I was in fear, I was in a new launch, and all the monkey mind noise came back up and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And I just honored it. I'm like, yep, this is how I feel. Up. And the next day I was like, oh, it's still kind of here. And usually that's an indication for me of like, I need to go journal dump this more. I need to
Mm-hmm.
see, what am I saying to myself right now? Where am I perpetuating this? So again, more practices around that. Anyhow, that's stage 2,
Mm-hmm.
acceptance, learning to be with it as it is, acknowledge it, validate it, and get curious about what you're feeling around it. Where is it in your body? And then curious about, how can I name the sensations and love them as they are, and watch your nervous system just start to allow. And
Without
again,
that
you could,
judgment, right? Like
without the
without that
judgment.
judgment, just like neutral
Yep.
observer.
Neutral observer. It's your child that you love and
Mm-hmm.
adore walking into your bedroom saying, I feel dot dot dot. Hold her until she's ready to go out and play again.
Right.
How long? As long as she needs. How long? As long as she needs. And here's what's going to happen, or here's what happens, why this isn't just easy for us. Because if you had a mom that didn't know how to be with her emotions, just knew how to fix it and make it better, then you learned to fix it. So you're going to have to overcome that. That's going to take some time. That's a dragon that you need to slay. That's an identity in the movie of your life. That is a main character that does not want to be fired.
No, and
And
it
that's why
perpetuates
it's,
over generation after generation as well until someone
yeah.
does.
And that's why healing isn't just linear or easy, or I'm going to give you these 5 stages and you're going to move through them
Right.
real quick. Some, it's going to be like you're going to be at this stage for a while. Or maybe you had a mom that told you your feelings don't matter. And so just being and acknowledging that there's an inner child in the room and that there's feelings. You're like, I don't know that I want to pick you up and hold you right now.
Right.
I've had many clients like that I'm like, just pick her up and hold her. And they're like, I don't want to. I'm like, okay, yeah, that's where we're at. So for those of you that experience it with a little more challenge there, this is the challenge you get to meet, because most likely as soon as you break through this one, it's going to be a breeze from there. But this is the
Mm-hmm.
stage. This is the pivotal stage for people to break through. And stage 3 is getting to the root, getting curious about who modeled this, whose energy is this, and where it could give you an opportunity to start to then, stage 4, reparent.
Mm-hmm.
So do you remember, you can ask yourself, is there a time that I remember feeling this way? Or that mom, whoever modeled this to you, that I experienced this? Can I remember a time? Now, don't do this if it's a big T trauma.
Right.
Don't go into, any kind of major traumatic moments of being hit or, any kind of abuse. Seek help for that. Don't open that box of Pandora.
Right.
But anything else, yeah, see if you can explore. And if you don't remember, imagine. It doesn't matter. Can I imagine when was the earliest time I felt this way? And connect to, what did I need in that moment? What did I need from my mom? What did I need to say, or what did I need to hear? And then give that to yourself. And that goes into stage 4, reparenting and rewiring. And if it's mom related, then it's self related. And we need to learn to give ourselves what we never got, what was never modeled to us. And if
Right.
it's dad related, we need to connect vulnerably. Let dad, who is not connected to you, back into your world. That's where you get to have a vulnerable conversation with, how could I have let dad know how he actually makes me feel when he's always working? Instead of coming and whining to him, Daddy, play with me. Daddy, play with me. You don't love me. Which would only be like, kid, what are you doing? Leave me alone. Instead, saying, Dad, when you're always working, I feel alone. I feel sad. And what would make me feel happy is if we played together. We need to pop these men, these fathers, out of their busy mind, which is, their drive to be supportive, and back
Yeah.
into their heart of like, oh, shoot, there's a child here that actually feels. They don't feel you like mom does. They're
Hmm.
not wired that way. So you have to bring them back into that. And then the reparenting happens out in the world with others, because that is what dad modeled.
Yeah.
And what happens when we reparent, when we give ourselves what we needed, is we close a loop that was left open. We have a discharge of energy of like, wow, if I actually got that when I was a little girl, I wouldn't have had to go into this survival pattern. And so a lot of times you'll experience some kind of emotional release, whether that's yawning, consistent yawning, burping, your eyes tearing, crying, tremoring, getting hot, getting cold. This is all ways that the nervous system is now finally making room, discharging that old energy and belief. And then you start to feel different. You start to feel spaciousness. And you can ask yourself, what's possible now that wasn't before? For myself, with myself, if it's self related. Or what's possible now that wasn't before? With others or out in the world that wasn't before? And see what arises that you end up saying in that moment. It's not always the opposite of the trigger. It's just what there's now room for. And
Hmm.
that's the rewiring. That's the new belief. That's the new seed that you get to plant in your garden now that you've actually pulled the weed out by the root. And then stage 5 is integration, education, stabilization, right? This is where lasting transformation happens in the integration. You go and you plant a new seed in a garden and you don't come back and water it or visit it or do anything with it, it's not growing. Right? We could do all the plant medicine work, all the shadow work, all the purging and crying and screaming and breath work and oh my God, blah, blah. Those are all great. But if you're not integrating it and creating a new identity, a new belief, and starting to practice acting as that new character, you're not going to be ready for opening night. You're not going to
Exactly.
be able to show up. And so who's going to show up is the old you. Survival will show up. And so making sure that you integrate, you say, okay, now that I believe that I am safe in the world, or that I can open up to others. I can be vulnerable with others. Let's just say that's the new belief. How does someone like that act in the world? I actually have no idea. I have no modeling for that. And that's where education comes in. That's where you can go and listen to the podcast on how to be intimate and vulnerable, or you can do an intimacy retreat. You can attend one. You could read the book. That's where there's actually room for information.
Right.
And then the stabilization is it takes time to stabilize it. You plant a seed, it takes time for it to germinate, sprout, grow, grow deep roots where it is solid, unshakable. And what you're looking at is about 18 months. This is what my mentor told me. Don't ask me why, but he had 40 years of experience. He told me 18 months, especially not with everything. Some things that are small, you know, minor characters in the movie of your life, boom, could be integrated in a week, stabilized in a week. But the main characters, if you've been playing a people pleaser or a savior or someone that always needs to be alone or a saboteur or you name it, the main characters, ah, you want to develop a new main character? There's a lot of script they have. There's a lot of practice they need. So being kind, patient, and compassionate with yourself in that stage of integration. Because you will, you will fall off the horse. You
Yeah.
will fall back. And don't give up then. Don't judge yourself then. Recognize, oh, I fell into old pattern. How quickly can you recognize it and get back in alignment? And that's what you're going to keep shortening is that window of time. And the next thing you know it's stabilized. And you don't even remember what it was like being that, playing that role. And that's the 5 stages.
That's amazing. I wanted to touch on real quick
Yeah.
because the falling off the wagon thing, right? Do you find at that, and I think that looking at it in these different stages is really helpful because I see a lot of my clients and just people in my community. One of the main things that they'll say to me a lot and over again is, I just can't seem to do this. Or, they like, I do it fine. And then I go back, I do it fine. And go back. They can't seem to break those patterns like you were just saying. And have you found that by the time you kind of sort of get to that stage 5 through this program, right? Through these methods, um, the nervous system regulation and the body mind connection and integration that needs to happen before you can sort of get to that point, do you find? Because like I find that most people just try and bypass all of that, and that's why they don't. That's why it doesn't stick. That's why it keeps coming back. It keeps coming back. It keeps coming back. And I think that's different than just falling off of the wagon once you sort of do that
Hmm.
work. Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
yeah, absolutely. So most people, so thank you. You actually reminded me. In awareness is also where you get to become aware of your nervous system and your breath. And are you even in your body?
Yeah.
Do you feel safe to be in your body? And nervous system practices that I teach to just cultivate safety in the body, because otherwise you think that you're moving through the stages. You are just skipping
Hmm.
from stage 1 to stage 5. You're
Yes.
not even digging in. You're just
That's what I
like,
see a
oh
lot
yeah,
of.
let me trim a weed. Yes. So I'm so glad you brought that up because that is the key. Because until we cultivate safety to even go there, we're not going to go there. And the key to
Absolutely.
cultivating safety is working with the nervous system. And for some people, they really can't be in their body. They're used to dissociating and checking out and leaving their body. And so those of you that know that that's a survival pattern you run, um, you're going to need to spend a lot more time just in stage 1. Those of you that are used to controlling and fixing, um, and don't know what it's like to feel, you're used to being a thinker. and
An
thinking it all out,
overthinker?
an overthinker, you're going to be stuck in state, not stuck, you're going to need to spend more time in stage 2.
It's more of a
It ca-
commitment,
it's a
you know?
commitment. It's not something to rush through. It's something to go as fast as your slowest part. And as someone that's a facilitator or a coach guiding someone through it, it's learning to really be attuned to how
Yeah,
much energy, how much they can handle. Not just like, let me check off the boxes and do everything Anat says and take them through the 5 stages in one session. Sometimes
exactly.
I'm able to take a client through all 5 in one session. And sometimes it's 6 sessions to get through that one thing, but that one thing happened to be the mothership for them.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
No, I just
yeah.
wanted to point that out because so many in my community are overthinkers. That goes along, I think, with
Mhm.
the creative brain, the
Mhm.
neurodiverse brain, the distracted brain. There's a lot to unpack there as well, not just like the physiology of the brain, but also like the way it's been imprinted upon and and all of those things. And so, being that overthinker and getting stuck in that overthinking process, that's why it's also so important to get back in the body because
Yes.
it left onto its own devices. You're just gonna spin that loop. So yeah, I wanted to just kind of to make sure that people really heard that part because I talk about nervous system regulation a lot because I feel like
Yeah.
that's that gateway, that like you said, that first step. I
Yes.
talk about it a lot with my community. I have, my son has autism, and when he
Mhm.
was younger, his teachers just they could not understand, why can't he, he seems to have so much growth here and he's so smart with this, and all of these things, right? Well, I'm like, he can't actually learn in your class because he can hear the lights, and he can, he's worried that the fire alarm is going to go off because he doesn't know that schedule, and if his nervous system is constantly in fight or flight because he cannot handle those loud noises that
Yeah.
are going to come whenever they happen, he's not even going to be able to integrate what you guys are trying to teach him. And so it's kind of the same thing with all of this. It's like if you are living in fight or flight all the time and you are so like this and everything is so close to you, there's no space. There's no space to actually even allow any of that in. So that
Yeah. So,
first part can last a while, like you said, and that's
yeah.
okay. Your timing is good.
Yeah.
Your timing is
Yeah.
perfect.
And here's the thing, and I'll give you guys a practice for a nervous system. A lot of times, if we've been operating in fight or flight, that actually becomes more familiar to us.
Oh, yeah.
That we'll swear up and down like, "Oh, no, no, I'm calm." And it's like, "Oh, no, no." And then once they work with me, they're like, "Oh, oh, this is homeostasis."
Yeah.
Oh, shit. I mean, I've gone through that myself. And so if you want to start to learn how to recognize that, don't wait till you're burnt out or collapsed on the couch to what you think is self-care, but is actually by that point self-repair.
Mm-hmm.
Be proactive around it. So being proactive and curious is just like you take a few breaks during the day and evening to eat your meals, take a few breaks to connect to your nervous system, to reset so that you can start to remember and feel what it's like to be in a to be in homeostasis, because then you'll recognize it more when you are climbing, when you are off the charts. When you're
Absolutely.
outside of your window of tolerance, you'll be able to recognize it and know, oh, in this moment, let me do this practice. And so the practice is simple. You could do it anywhere, anytime. Starts with 2 rounds of box breathing. What is
Mm-hmm.
box breathing? Inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, hold for 4 on empty. So doing 2 rounds of that. And I love to start with an exhale because if you're a shallow breather or you tend to freeze and hold your breath, then there's a lot of stagnant air. So start with exhaling it all out, sucking your belly button in so that you're fully emptied out of that stagnant air. So your first inhale could be super deep, feeling your belly, filling your your lungs, your chest, and then holding and doing that for 2 rounds. And then on your third round, add tapping on your chest or tapping anywhere on your body, starting to really wake up sensations in the body. And on the exhale, make sound. Because that activates the vagus nerve.
Yeah.
And if you have kids, do this with them. Everybody do it together. You feel like, oh my
Yes.
God, I'm yelling at my kids. I'm stressed out right now. Hey, kids, let's all do this fun practice together. And suddenly you get to downregulate, and so do they. And then it's a happier home.
Yes.
So starting with that, and you could just do that if you want. And then you could add other things. So doing 2 rounds of both of those. And then if you really want, you can get into more of the body of bringing your left shoulder, your left ear to your left shoulder. So tilting your head, and then with your eyes looking up. So if you tilt your left to your left, look with all the way to the right corner with your eyes
Mm-hmm.
and take a few breaths. And then the other side, right ear to right shoulder, looking with your eyes all the way to the top corner, taking a few breaths, and then pressing on your neck, releasing anything that's there, all while breathing. And then start to scan your body. Close your eyes. Actually, before you scan your eyes, look around your room and name 5 things that are the same color.
Mm-hmm.
And then close your eyes and start to scan your body from head to toe or toe to head. Be like, ooh, what do I notice? Any temperature, any tingling, any warmth? And all of that is acclimating you back into your body. And most likely, you'll start to tear or experience some yawning. It's not because you're tired, and maybe you are. This is your nervous system discharging the energy.
Yeah.
And if you're not yawning during it, you'll be yawning afterwards. And then just sit in that for a few minutes. Be like, oh. And then ask yourself, what do I need right now? Now that you're back in the present moment in your body. Ooh, I'm thirsty, or I'm hungry, or I'm tired. I need a break. And then honor that.
Honor it.
Honor
Yeah.
your body. Oh, but I just have this one more thing I need to do on my computer. No, that is what happens. We override our body with our mind, and we push our nervous system into overdrive, and then we are in fight or flight. And so do this practice twice a day, and you'll start to be more tuned to your body. And then you'll be able to naturally remember to breathe and remember to slow down throughout your day and listen to your body so that you stay within your window of tolerance.
Amazing. That's so great. Thank you so much for all of these wonderful tips. I hope you guys were taking notes. I hope you guys, you may have to listen more than once. These were some really awesome, awesome little nuggets that you dropped here for people today. So I appreciate you so much. Tell people
Thank you.
where to connect with you and to learn more from you. If they want to work with you or if they want to chat with you, where would that be best for you for them to do that?
Yeah, so I'm most active on Instagram. And even though my bio on there says that I mentor coaches and healers. I also, it's just, you got a niche. So that is who I ideally
Right.
work with now. But for the past 8 years, I've worked with every human that is just wanting deeper healing. So same thing with my website, trainingcampforthesoul.com. It may say on there for coaches, healers, and leaders, and my virtual program is available to any adult human. But if if you follow me on Instagram, you'll most likely get a message from me because I like to get to know all my
Good.
followers and find out how I can support you. And you could beat me to it and send me a message too.
That's awesome. I'll put all of that in the show notes for people to make it super easy for them to connect with you. But thank you so much. This was just amazing, a wonderful, wonderful conversation that I know is going to have a really big impact on so many people. So thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you, listeners, for tuning in.